It is not a diet, not a protocol, not a trend that arrived.
I'm 95 and I eat the same way I have for 60 years. It is not a diet, not a protocol, not a trend that arrived and will soon depart. It is something far simpler and far older, something your great-grandmother would have recognized immediately. Come, sit with me a moment. I have something I want to tell you, not because I think I know more than you, but because I have been here a long time, and some things, after 95 years, begin to make a particular kind of sense. My name is Margaret Eloise Hartwell, and I am 95 years old this past April. I still wake up before the sun most mornings, not because I have to, not because some alarm is ringing. I wake up because something in me, something very old and very quiet, still wants to see what the day is going to do. I tell people that and they look at me like I've said something remarkable, but it doesn't feel remarkable to me. It feels like the most natural thing in the world. I suppose that is what I want to talk to you about today. Not a regimen, not a program, not a list of things to eat or avoid. What I want to talk about is something older than all of that. Something I learned not from a book or a doctor, but from a woman who grew up without electricity, who fed 7 children from a kitchen the size of a closet, and who never, not once in her long life, thought of food as anything other than a gift. That woman was my grandmother, Nora. And everything I know about eating, I learned from watching her hands. I should tell you, though, I did not always listen to what those hands were trying to teach me. When I was in my 40s, I was a different person. I was busy in the way that people in the middle of their lives are busy, always running, always behind, always eating whatever was fastest, whatever was nearest, whatever required the least thought. I skipped meals for days, and then ate too much of the wrong things for weeks. I was tired in a way that sleep didn't fix. My body felt like a machine I had forgotten to service. My doctor told me very gently that I needed to make some changes. She showed me numbers on a page, blood pressure, blood sugar, inflammation markers, and none of them were where they should have been. I remember sitting in that office, looking at those numbers, and feeling something I had not felt in a very long time. Ashamed. Not of my body. I want to be clear about that. Ashamed that I had let the noise of the world drown out something my grandmother had tried to give me, free of charge, before I was even old enough to understand its value. I drove home that afternoon in silence, and I sat in my kitchen for a very long time, just sitting. And then, I don't know exactly why, maybe it was the light coming through the window just the way it used to come through Nora's kitchen window when I was small, I remembered her hands. I remembered how she woke up early every single morning and made oatmeal on the stovetop. Real oats, simmered slowly, with just a little cream, and whatever fruit was in season. Strawberries in June, apples in the fall. Sometimes nothing at all, just the oats, because they were enough on their own. I remembered how she never ate quickly. She always sat down, even when there were 7 children and a farm to tend, and 100 things demanding her attention. She always sat down first. I remembered her garden, tomatoes and beans and herbs she'd dry and hang from the ceiling. She never called it a garden. She called it what we've got, as in, use what we've got. Be glad of what we've got. Don't reach for what isn't yours yet. I went to the grocery store the next morning, and for the first time in 20 years, I bought food the way she used to, slowly, looking at things, smelling things, choosing things that still looked like what they were before anyone got a hold of them. It was such a small thing, and it changed everything. The change didn't happen overnight. I want to be honest with you about that. It took months before my body started to feel different, and even longer before my mind settled into the new rhythm. But I remember the morning I knew something real had shifted. I woke up. I must have been 47, maybe 48, and I didn't feel the usual heaviness, that dragging, reluctant feeling of pulling yourself out of sleep like you're unsticking from mud. I just woke up, and the day felt like it had room in it. I I went downstairs and made myself a bowl of oatmeal, just like Nora used to. And I sat down at my kitchen table, the same table where I had sat in shame a year before, and I ate it slowly, and I looked out at my garden and thought, I am not behind. I am not failing. I am not too late.
I was 47 years old, and I finally understood what food was for. It is not fuel, exactly. It is not medicine, exactly. It is both of those things and something else that I don't have a single word for. It is the most ordinary act of saying, I am still here. I intend to stay. I am willing to take care of this life I have been given. These days, at 95, I eat the same way I have eaten for nearly 60 years now. I start with something warm in the morning, oatmeal most days, or eggs from my neighbor's hens, or sometimes just good bread with butter and a piece of fruit. Nothing complicated. Nothing that requires a machine to make it edible. I eat lunch slowly, usually with someone. That part matters more than I can say. Not the food itself, but the sitting together. I have found that food eaten in a hurry, eaten alone over a screen or standing at a counter, tastes different than food eaten in the company of another person. It nourishes differently too. I am sure of this, though I couldn't tell you why. I eat supper early, and not much of it. Soup, often. Vegetables from my garden in the summer. Preserved things in the winter. I have never counted anything. Not calories, not grams, not servings. I don't know how much of anything I eat. I only know when I'm satisfied, and I stop there. People sometimes ask me what I avoid, and I find the question difficult to answer because I don't think in terms of avoidance. I think in terms of what is real, what grew somewhere, what was made by a person rather than a process. If I can picture the field it came from or the hands that made it, I am probably on solid ground. The rest I leave mostly alone, not because I'm afraid of it, just because I have never been particularly interested in it. The truth I have come to after 95 years is this. Your body is not the enemy. It is not a project. It is not a problem to be optimized. It is the house you live in, the only one you will ever have, and it is asking you, very quietly, for the same things it has always asked for. Simple things, real things, things your great-grandmother would have recognized. We have made eating so complicated, so frightening, so full of rules and contradictions and shame. I understand why. The world is loud and the choices are overwhelming, and everyone is trying to sell you something. But beneath all of that noise, the body's needs are remarkably simple. They have not changed in 100 years. They have not changed in 1,000. Eat things that still look like food. Eat slowly enough to taste them. Eat with people when you can. Stop when you are satisfied. Be grateful for what is in front of you. That is all Nora ever did. She lived to 92, in a house without central heating, working every day until the last few years of her life. She never went to a gym. She never read a nutrition label. She never, to my knowledge, worried about her body for a single day. She simply trusted the old arrangement between a person and the earth, and the earth, as far as I could tell, was kind to her in return. I am 95 years old. I still tend a small garden. I still cook most of my own meals. I still sit down to eat them. Some mornings my knees complain on the stairs. Some evenings I fall asleep in my chair before the news is over. I am old. I feel old in my bones sometimes, in a way that is not unpleasant. It is more like the settling of a house that has been through many seasons. But I am here, and I feel, and this is the only word that fits, I feel nourished. Not just by the food, by the knowing, by the 60 years of practice, by the memory of Nora's hands and the sound of oatmeal simmering on a cold morning when I was 7 years old, and the world was very small and very full. I don't know what tomorrow looks like for you. I don't know what you've been told about your body or what rules you've tried to follow or what made you tired enough to stop and listen to an old woman talk about oatmeal. But I want to leave you with something Nora said to me once, when I was young and impatient and already in too much of a hurry. She said, "Margaret, the body knows what it needs. You just have to be quiet enough to hear it." I have been trying to be that quiet ever since. I think it has helped.